Come on.
Good morning.
This is Simon Tees. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
That's better. The truth of the matter is that I have been lucky and fortunate enough to travel around the United States and speak to a number of large and small groups. I will admit to you, and I am not certainly playing to the crowd, by far, this is the most exciting morning marketing group in the nation. I went to a group outside of St. Louis, Missouri about 3 weeks ago. Me and the other guy that was there thought it was a great day. So, and I did read a moment ago, you talked about the Rolling Stones. They're doing a 4th show here in the Bay Area out at Rossmore. They're going to be bringing the Hells Angels golf cart gang in to control security, and it should be a heck of a time. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about here today, and maybe we'll get some time to do some Q&A. You know, last time I was here, I was talking about HARP and what's going on in the mortgage industry and the real estate industry. I decided to talk a little bit about what I'm learning that might have a direct impact on folks owning homes in the United States, and maybe all of us as consumers. That's the MID, mortgage interest rate deduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's floating around in that area in just a minute, but I'm also going to tell you a little bit about where I think interest rates are going to go. And then these things are really an opportunity to share best practices. And so what I like to try to do is make sure that you all learn a little bit about what I'm seeing that works and maybe what doesn't work in particular areas of our craft. Today's sales skills. So let's talk about hot topics, and let's talk about the mortgage interest rate deduction. Go ahead, Chris. Keep going, keep going. One more, and one more. There you go. One more. Well, there are a fair amount, as you all know, and I'm not even sure you can read that. There are a large amount of the deficit has created the United States government to get pretty creative on what we're going to do to pick up that deficit. Now it's our turn. Our government experts in Washington are saying that we need to take a look at the mortgage interest rate deduction. That means that they are debating two things. One, whether or not we remove that deduction altogether, or two, whether we limit that deduction. Most of you know today, right around $1 million is what your total deductibility is on an interest rate on a mortgage on your primary home. There's been a lot of discussion about how they're going to slice that up a little bit. Let me tell you what we're seeing. One, incredibly, it's one of the very few topics that people, both Democrats and Republicans, seem to agree on. That apparently it hurts everyone equally, which I've never understood that statement. It also, they don't believe yet of what it'll do to the real estate market. There are a number of reports out as to what it's going to do to values and also potentially stifle or stall the real estate recovery. It does seem to have bipartisan support, and it does seem to be the first step in revising the tax code, which is hot on a number of topics. Let me tell you a little about what is happening with respect to the total amount of deduction each year. There's about $100 billion worth of foregone revenue by our deducting of the mortgage interest rate deduction. It flows generally to households that are between 100 and 200 grand. The renters benefit the most because first-time home buyers seem to be most interested in taking advantage of that deduction. You may not be surprised that coastal areas like California seem to be the hardest hit, and in fact California happens to be the 3rd highest use of the mortgage interest rate deduction per unit in the United States. Statistically, we are looking at a couple of things. You can click on down to the next one, Chris. Statistically, we're looking at a couple of things. One, the Mortgage Bankers Association estimates that should you eliminate the mortgage deduction completely, you are likely to see an approximate 10% drop in home values almost immediately. There was a separate report done, you can click one more down, Chris, there was a separate report done by the Brookings Institute, and the Brookings Institute said even if you reduced it down to something like 500 grand or 350 grand as a total mortgage amount that you could deduct, they see a 7 to 15% reduction in values across the United States. so far, from a trade association, MBA, Bankers Association, of course, National Association of Realtors, and on, continue to make quite a bit of noise about not eliminating this. That maybe we could do some focus on things like collecting the interest that's due or the taxes that are due, and secondarily simplifying the code so that she doesn't pay 2% and I pay 42%. There's a fair amount of discussion that's happening right now that rather than attack something like this, it might make more sense to figure out a way to try to collect what's due and try to stop the waste. I don't think it's going to go away, but you need to be aware of this. I guarantee you that the California Association of Realtors is talking about this, and to your point about your ledge day that's coming up, it's pretty critical you attend and let local folks know what's happening. The reason that's important is this, so follow some of this math for a minute. When you reduce the mortgage interest rate deduction, and you reduce the value of your home, it also reduces local tax revenue, because as values go down, local tax revenue goes down. So in an effort to help the federal deficit, you're actually making more problems for local state deficit issues. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's important you participate and have your voice be heard. Let's talk about what's going on in the interest rate world. Chris, you can click on, go ahead. Yeah, I know, rates are low, they've been low for a while, they're going to eventually go up. I'm going to spin through this pretty quickly. I'm going to talk a little bit about what just happened today. How many of you have an idea of what's gone on this morning? Great, so let me tell you what happened. The expectation is we should have had about 200,000 new jobs created. We had about 88,000 created. Equities are off over 100 when I last checked. The bond market is slightly below, the 10-year is slightly below 170. What does that all mean to interest rates? It seems like as soon as we're all saying, get ready, rates are going to go up, they drop again. And so here's the funky part of this. In addition to equities being off, the 10-year being down, and interest rates being better by about 0.5% today. I guess the good news is, if you can find a home, you'll get a heck of a good interest rate on it. And the fact is that we keep saying, we're probably not going to stay here, and I'm going to remind you to remind your customers. And I know you know this already. I did an interview a couple of days ago for the Associated Press about tips in helping buy a home. He said, okay, last line, what would you like to end here with? And I said, stop telling your customers to wait. You should buy now. You should buy now because in a year from now, two things are going to be sure. A, I'm positive rates are going to be up. And B, you're not going to be able to get the same home at the same deal. It's surprising to me what percentage of our business is coming in from you guys on purchases that are coming in with multiple offers. And further, in many instances, the appraisal is coming in here, the offer is up here, and the borrower is willing to make up the difference because they don't want to lose that house. So it's not going to get better a year from now. I know you all know all that. Go ahead and click down a couple on this one, Chris. It does appear that quantitative easing 3 is making a difference in keeping interest rates low, and it does appear to be helping our economy kind of sputter along. Our Fed says that we're going to see low inflation, and we're going to continue to see unemployment around 7.7%. Before the Fed says it's going to do anything to start raising rates, is their target is 6.5%. There's a number of people that believe that that's an unrealistic target, that the new normal for unemployment is between 7.5% and 8%, not 6.5 to 7. Here's our issue. Number one, I mean, if you just think about this, my question to the United States government and the leadership in Washington, D.C., and by the way, just so you know, I'm not talking about anyone in particular. I'm talking about our leadership. That means Democrats, Republicans, independents. That means our administration in the White House. That means our regulators, our legislators. These are the folks that have their hands on the wheel, loosely as it may seem. And the fact is, they've got to start listening to us. Because let me tell you something. Think about this for a minute. and the unemployment rate drops, which it did today. Now you might say, well, that's mathematically not possible. No, it is. A whole slew of people dropped off the unemployment rolls. That means you've got people that are no longer receiving any income and are unemployed. If you want to talk about helping Americans, let's start talking about helping Americans get back all those jobs that we sent overseas. We've outsourced, we've offshored, we've unemployed, out of worked all of our good, hardcore people. I mentioned a moment ago, I was in St. Louis about 2 weeks ago. I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to cruise through places like Ohio, Michigan, St. Louis, that Rust Belt area. It is incredibly depressing. There are these gorgeous homes, and row after row after row of them are just boarded up. And when I talk to local folks in that area, how do we get people back in? They look at you and say, we're offshore manufacturing everything because we can make one of these in China a lot cheaper than we can make it in Cupertino or in Missouri or in Detroit or in Dearborn, Michigan. We're no longer manufacturing anything. And you might say, well, that's because it's the politicians' fault. No, it's not. It's in part our regulatory scheme. Now, you don't need to run out here and say, Chris George says to release all the regulations. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying every one of you that has ever run a business or currently run one right now operate under this scheme. You operate under a reward or a punishment. I'm not going to do something, cross over a particular line, because I'm going to get in trouble. And if I do this thing, I get a reward. The carrot and the proverbial stick. So look, why don't we start talking to these businesses that are offshoring and outsourcing their work product and have them come back to the United States and say, hey, if you come back to the United States, we'll give you a little bit of a benefit. Economic as it may be, let's get those workers back here. We're manufacturing American product, I mean historic American product, not in America anymore. And the best example I can give to you, and it's like this, when I say this, you guys go like this. My son and I are restoring a 1968 Camaro RS. Now, if you've ever had one of those cars, they're cool. For some reason, he thinks it's cool. He's 17, and I think it's very cool. So listen, we're redoing the rally wheels on this thing. I saw you go like this. So the rally wheel is this thing that bolts onto the wheel. It's a very cool, original-looking product. I wanted to put original equipment, manufactured product on this Camaro. I get these brand new steel rally wheels, brand new. I take them and flip them over. For a $10 Starbucks card, what do you think it said on the other side? Come on. Made in China. A doggone Camaro replacement part that's an original equipment. Now, I got nothing against Chinese stuff. I'm a little more particular to American stuff. I mean, aren't you? Aren't you at a place where you're finally saying, hey, enough's enough? So we've got to figure out a solution, and the solution is us. I'm tired of waiting for them to do something. Eventually, we're going to have to get to a place where we begin to speak as one voice. Because think about it. We listen to these guys, and just look at yourself for a second. I'm talking to her and I like her. She's talking about sports. She's telling me about what she does. She's a very polite, very articulate, extremely nice woman. And we are getting along fabulously. And then suddenly she says she is either a Democrat or a Republican. And immediately, depending on what side of the fence I'm on, I got to kind of step back a little. We have polarized ourselves to believe that simply because someone is one or the other, that they are suddenly a bad person. It is no longer about the party, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go back to the person. Let's focus on the people. Let's stop being what we tried to outlaw years ago. Do you remember there was a time that we used to say, you know what, I can't listen to her and her opinion doesn't matter simply because she's a woman. You realize there was a time like that in our country. I can't talk to him and listen to what he says simply because he's from the South. There was a time like that in our country. But we got rid of those times. We've got to start telling our political people, enough's enough. Stop acting like children. Because think about it. If you had 7-year-olds and they were acting like that, you'd bang their heads together and say, knock it off. One other thing. If it's going to be, it's up to me. You have absolutely no right to complain if you're not willing to participate. You've got to get your hands on the wheel and tell them, enough's enough. If you're not going to fix it, we'll vote you out. And that's how we'll change where we're at today. Real quickly on one last thing, Chris, and then I'm going to talk about some sales stuff. You can't read this, but I'll tell you what it says. Yesterday, our average rate was 3.9%. It's actually down a little bit lower this morning. Here's something you can write down. Invite me back 6 months from now, right? Invite me back 12 months from now. We'll see how right I am. 6 months from now, I think that 3.9 is going to be about 4.25, 4.2. And 12 months from now, I think that 3.9 is going to be about 4.5. Okay, Chris, hit it. One more.